I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
So I think the question is, do we really believe what Martin Luther King said? Have we come to a point in this country where we've evolved beyond the race question? Obviously not. When we look at the 2010 census form, which focuses on race quite heavily, it would seem that the government begs to differ with Martin Luther King. We may have come a long way in this country from the old Jim Crow days. We have a president now who is classified as African American, but that again raises a question. The census form uses a category to define certain races. Under African American, it says black, African American, or Negro, which is, of course, I'll talk a minute about the Negro phrase. But how would Barack Obama classify himself today? Because he is half white. Is he white? Is he black? Is he African American? I'm sure he's not going to call himself a Negro. Tiger Woods, who is various races. What is Tiger Woods? I mean, how do we define ourselves these days, and how should we define ourselves? The point is, when you look around at most Americans today, they are quite a mixed breed, myself being one type person. On one side, I have some African American ancestry, and on the other side of my family, I have a heavy Native American heritage. What am I? And then I guess the big question is, what business is it of the government what my heritage is? And I think the big question, too, is how and should the government define race, or should they be defining race? That's one big question. And what does the government plan to do with the racial information they're collecting on the census form and on the American Community Survey, which is the long form and which is more intrusive? Basically, the answers out of the Census Bureau is basically now that state and local governments can use the race information to determine how they redistrict and set up local voting districts. The question would be here, with the kind of Congress we have right now, which has a 17% approval rating, which, by the way, is really low. Most people have no confidence in Congress. Do we really want this Congress or local jurisdictions, which a lot of people don't trust either, setting up districts that are primarily pandering to African Americans or Hispanics, or worse yet, setting up districts where there's only 10% of African Americans included are Hispanics, and we get back into the old racism question that we faced again and again in this country. Maybe the thing that bothers me most about the so-called race questions on census forms, or any time the government raises that and they want to know specifically what races we have, is the question of profiling, which we're going through right now. There's even a piece of legislation in Congress that's going to move toward profiling. In other words, picking out certain people that we might want to round up and arrest in a time of stress or tension in this country. People say, well, gee, isn't this information anonymous on the census form? And purportedly under law, the information you provide in the census form is supposedly sealed. But we have to go back to the history books, and this is where most Americans in our public education system is really letting us down. If you just look at the history book, folks, in 1943, the American Census Bureau released information on Japanese Americans during World War II, and American citizens, innocent American citizens, were rounded up and put in internment camps in this country, what we call concentration camps, and kept for the duration of the war. These were people innocent they didn't do anything, they were innocent. They were rounded up. Why? Because of the color of their skin and their heritage. Could that happen again? There are many fine Muslims living in the United States. Do you think that in a time of another 9/11 attack that the Census Bureau is going to set on the racial question there? Do you really believe that? Probably not. We have to be really careful what we're doing here. So I guess the question is, have we really come to a time when we need to watch out how we collect information, how the government uses information, why are they doing it, and get back to Martin Luther King's presupposition, what he said. Isn't it time to drop the race question? Aren't we all just members of the human race?